So much to both the students and the staff for being willing to come in and participate with this event for us. We think that this is a very significant event. We are very grateful to South Carolina NAMI for coming in and the Department of Mental Health to come in and share with us this morning. And I'd like to introduce, and then Ms. Crum wants to speak for just a moment, I'd like to introduce our speakers this morning. It's going to be Mr. Lee Fletcher, Lee, from South Carolina NAMI. Affiliation to South Carolina NAMI, yes. And Ms. Sarah Dunbar. She'll give a little wave. And we want to give a little welcome. What is that? NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and today's program is on ending the silence, so that you will better understand about mental health issues with teens and adults as well. So they're going to equip you this morning with a lot of information and resources for you, and this is a very important subject for us as high schoolers, because we do deal with a lot each and every day. So Ms. Crone wants to speak just very briefly to you, and then we're going to turn the program over to Lee.
There you go.
Okay, just for a minute. As most of y'all know, I'm the counselor here, so you're going to hear some things this morning that may affect you. You may have some relatives or friends, or even you yourself may be going through some things. I just want you to know that I am here if you need some help, or if you need to talk with anyone. There's people here to assist, whether you just want to come and you're not sure, you have questions or whatever. So I just want you to know that this is a safe place, basically. So if you need to talk, I'm right across the hall anytime. You don't have to come today, but anytime that I am available. I just want you to come anytime, whenever you want to come. But there are some things that have happened recently, and we all know friends in high schools, things that have happened. So there are some people that are affected by things that they're going to talk about today, whether that's you or not. I want you to be aware of signs, and if you see something going on, you are the person that's going to help your friend. We, a lot of times as teachers and people in the schools with administration, I'm a counselor, I don't see everybody. I don't get to know everybody. You're the friend of theirs. So if you see something, if you're worried about them for whatever reason, please come get one of us so that we can help them, because that's what we're here for. We want to make sure everyone is safe, and whatever reason's going on for them, there is help for them. So we just want y'all to know that we're always here for that, okay? All right.
And I'm just going to quickly tell you what brought NAMI, the organization, to us this morning. HOSA, which is our student-led organization, NAMI is our national service project and has been for the last 2 years. So we've been very fortunate to have that connection with this organization, and we've learned a lot over the last few years and hope to continue to support it and reach out to it through the entire high school. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I first want to just say thank you for letting us be here. It really is a privilege to talk to you. Hopefully it will be a little less boring than class might have been. Maybe it'll be a little bit more boring. I can't really say, but I do want to start off by saying that, you know, we're going to talk about a serious subject, but it's not a morose subject. It's not something that we can't have a little bit of fun with, all right? So please don't feel like that if I make a joke, I will make a joke. It'll be lame that you can't laugh, okay? Please laugh at my lame jokes. It helps me. All right. So my name is Lee. Sarah and I are here. We represent NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. But we don't work for NAMI. We're here not as experts on the subject even. We're here because we have a lived experience with mental health. So either us or someone in our lives very close to us has experienced mental health issues, and we're here to share it with you from that perspective. So I hope that that kind of connects things a little bit better for you. Throughout the presentation, we've got some videos. These videos are really cool. They've been done by high schoolers, and so hopefully, I said they're really cool. What do I know? Hopefully, you'll like them and see them as something that kind of reaches you a little bit better than just a regular old video. So you guys in the back, let me know if you can't hear it. I think it's up as loud as it'll go, so we'll see.
ADD makes it impossible to focus. Don't they get it? I get depressed about everything. No one feels like I do.
My brother's autistic. No one knows what that's like.
I've been bipolar my whole life. It's so hard on my friends and family.
I have anorexia. I can't tell anyone.
I get so anxious. I can't stand it. No one ever seems to care. My OCD knows everybody. I don't have any friends.
I'm suicidal. Would anyone care if I were gone?
I know what you mean. Sometimes I feel the same way.
Yeah, that's totally me.
Thanks for having my back.
So what is mental health? And there, I've got like, there's like 35 videos, so you're probably going to want to either.
Just keep it down.
Well, can you show on the back ones maybe, so that or the left one? Not that one. All right. Spotlight on the back. Can maybe these over here? I'm gonna fall asleep. All right, perfect. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Good. So, what is mental health, right? What is it? What is it exactly? What is it? What are we talking about? Well, you heard a few things mentioned there as far as what's concerned with mental illness. We heard ADHD. You may have heard PTSD. You may have heard even suicide. And that is those are kind of diagnoses that we talk about when we talk about mental health. How many of you, just by show of hands, know someone that is close to you who has a mental illness or has been affected by mental health? Maybe it's a friend of theirs or someone, right? So, you know, if you look around the room, you'll see that that's quite a high percentage of us, including myself and my fellow presenter, Sarah. So, what is mental health? We all have physical health. Well, guess what? We all have mental health. Just like you have, you can have a physical illness, you can have a mental illness. It's a natural, kind of common thing that happens to many of us. All right? And so when we talk about mental health or mental illness, or you may hear me say brain disorders, that kind of thing, those are all similar terms that we're going to use today. There's good mental health, you know, a healthy mind that processes the ups and downs of life on a pretty even keel. You know, we all have those days where, you know, you might show up to a presentation and the computer doesn't work, or on your drive in from Columbia, there's 4 or 5 construction zones you weren't planning on. You know, you go through these difficulties and you just kind of go through it easily and take it as it comes. You know, that's having good mental health. Of course, we're going to talk about what not having good mental health means, but with good mental health and with good physical health, there are things that you can do to maintain good physical health. You can eat right. You can sleep well. Well, the same is with mental health. It can be maintained with good habits. Mental health conditions, like I said, are just like mental illnesses are just like physical illnesses. They can be treated. There are tons of treatments out there. We're going to talk more about those. It's a commonplace occurrence for folks to have a mental health issue. And so it's something that, believe it or not, though, we don't really talk about very much. When was the last time, you know, any of you had a conversation about yours or someone else's mental health? Right? You've seen someone who has broken their arm, maybe playing sports. We're in baseball season, I guess. You know, I was just rubbing my tennis elbow from baseball season from many years back. So, you know, we get injured and we talk about our physical illnesses, but what about our mental health? We talk about how to eat right, but do we ever talk about how to keep our mental health up and running well? Mental health conditions, while they are physical, just very similar to physical illnesses, commonplace, they're not anyone's fault. You know, I don't have depression because my mother was a bad mother. My friends who struggle with OCD don't have OCD because they did something wrong in their life, right? Mental illnesses are not someone's fault. And we're going to see a little bit later that they're not limiting as well. That there are
mental illness is as common as following dirty blood.
There are plenty of people that you know or have heard of who are, you know, famous in that realm, and if I could use that word, I should say, who are living their lives successfully with mental illnesses.
Mental illness is as common as someone with dirty blonde hair or hazel eyes. In fact, 1 in 4 people in the USA alone experience a mental illness every year. That's more than 57 million people. 2/3 of those people never seek professional help, and many don't know where to go or fear discrimination. But we can change this by simply becoming a friend and lending out a hand to those in need. We have the ability to help each other out. So why not? To start learning how you can become a friend, visit us.reachout.com.
So I need your help for this next part. If your birthday is in April, June, or November, I need you to stand up. April, June, or November. I need you to stand up. All right? It's not accurate, but there should be at least one person in each row standing up. All right, so this group right here is going to represent the number of teenagers who are, who will or are dealing with a mental illness. There should be 1 in 5 of you. Some of you are not standing up. All right? So, here's what I need though. I need out of the 20% of the room, all right? Out of the 20% of the room, I'm going to let you sit down, and then in the Puma shirt sit down, and then the young lady behind, yep, right there, you sit down, and one more here, and then you sit down there. Yeah, you can sit down in the glasses. And then in the sweatshirt. All right, that's about half of the ones that were standing up. All right. This is the percentage of teenagers. These folks represent the percentage of teenagers that will never seek treatment for the mental illness. Okay. So I want you to see that, right? And then I want you guys. Thank you guys for standing up. Then I want you to imagine. You know, tonight is what game is Cleveland in? LeBron's playing somebody. They're playing the Pacers. What number is it? What game? Huh? Is it 6? Yeah, so it's a 6 game. All right. Imagine LeBron. He's probably already at the basketball arena this morning, getting ready to start warming up for his day. He trips on the sidewalk, falls over and breaks his wrist. Right. Goes in and he's changing in the locker room, and it's clear that his wrist is broken. It's hanging off to the side. People are looking at him like, "What's going on, buddy?" He's like, "Nothing. It's no big deal. I'm fine." He starts getting dressed, and he's gonna, go through. He's getting his ankles taped, and he's, getting his uniform on, and the trainers are, looking at him like, "What? Your wrist is messed up, right?" He's like, "No, it's fine. I can play. It's no big deal." We would think of somebody like that, and we would see somebody like that, and we'd say, "Man, something's wrong. You've got to go get that fixed." But yet, half of the teenagers who have a mental illness, half of the young people will never seek help for that. Why do you think that's the case? Why would someone who has a mental illness or think they might have a mental illness, why wouldn't they go ask for help? They're scared. What are they afraid of? Judgment. Okay. What else? Shame. Denial. Pride. What do they have to lose if they what about their pride do they have to lose? Would someone lose? Be afraid of losing. Okay, their social standing. What people think of them. We would never look down on somebody if they got cancer. We would never look down on somebody because they have pneumonia. But there's a stigma attached to mental health. There's a stain on people who have a mental illness, and they're treated differently. It's a common belief that when we see one of these mass shootings that happens on television, it's a common thought to go straight to say, I wonder what was wrong with that guy. He must have had some sort of a mental illness, right? But the truth is that people who have mental illnesses are less likely to be perpetrators of violence. In fact, they're more likely to be victims of violence than they are to be perpetrators. And so we've attached this stigma to it. How many of you have experienced stigma? You're teenagers. Has anyone ever told you you can't do something because of your age? Without ever getting to know you? Was that fair? You know, my 12-year-old is telling me all the time, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. I can't do this, I can't do that. You know, I get it. But when you think about how unfair that is, right? You can't control being 12. You can't control being a teenager. My son can't control being 12. Imagine what that is to feel that same sort of stigma, to not be allowed to do things, to be stereotyped, to be looked upon as being someone to be afraid of. And yet, having that condition and knowing you're going to be living with it for the rest of your life. So, what does a mental illness look like? We've got some warning signs I'm going to show up here, and I'm actually going to read these out to you because I think they're pretty important. But as you're hearing these, I want you to remember that, you know, like I said before, we all go through times in our day and our lives when we have ups and downs. You know, we lose a family member, or maybe just we have a bad breakup. Maybe you're just now realizing that you've got a test next period and you didn't study for it last night. Those are anxieties that, right? Those are anxieties that we all will feel, right? But when we talk about mental illness, we're talking about persistent and so things that are happening for a long time, I should say. That's not the right word. Consistently, that happen over a long time, 2 weeks or more, right? Or things that are affecting kind of your daily life, all right, in big ways. So we're looking for things that last over a time period and are so severe that they're affecting your daily life. All right. So the signs of a mental health issue: feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks, severe out of control risk-taking behaviors that cause harm to self or others, sudden overwhelming fear for no reason, sometimes with a racing heart, physical discomfort, or fast breathing, seeing, hearing, or believing things that aren't real, drastic changes in mood, behavior, personality, or sleeping habits. You know, again, a lot of these things can happen to us just because we're going through a difficult time period. You know, when I was in high school, I was a senior, my best friend's little brother was a freshman. And do you guys go to first week? The first week after? No. So the first week after school let out, we all headed to the beach. It was a terrible mistake on our parents' part, but they would fund most of it, and we would go and, you know, hang out and just talk. So I remember hanging out with my best friend's little brother, and him talking about and that day actually talking about jumping off of the balcony. We were about 7 or 8 stories up. And we're able to kind of walk through the conversation and talk about kind of things that he had going on in his life that were difficult, but the things that he had going on in his life that were worth living for, and walked away from it. It was about about 6 months later that his behavior went from thinking about suicide and talking about it with people to then driving erratically and speeding. And so one night he and a friend were out and they were taking a corner too fast. His tire pops, flipped the car over, landed on top of him, and killed him instantly. You know, I then find out from his mother that he had been dealing with symptoms of schizophrenia, and that mental health condition was, kind of showing itself in these little ways that were treatable, that were addressable, but no one was there listening to him and understanding and trying to understand him and see where he was coming from, and recognizing what was happening to be able to say, hey, Mark, can we talk to you? Can we talk a little bit? And then maybe we can go find some help. Other warning signs of a mental illness: extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still that puts a person in danger or causes school failure. Intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. Throwing up, using laxatives or not eating to lose weight. Using alcohol or drugs excessively. trying to harm oneself, attempt suicide, or making plans to do so. Those last three are what we call negative coping mechanisms. You know, sometimes there are things going on in our life that we try to shut them out, or we think something's missing and we try to fill it with something else. And that's what happens when we see a negative coping mechanism going on, is that someone's trying to, is that we're trying to figure out what's wrong on the inside. And so we start doing these things to kind of either distract us or to take the place or to solve the problem that we don't understand.
I feel insecure around people.
I want to eat, but I won't.
I'm trying to fill this emptiness inside.
I need to make everything perfect.
I feel so alone.
Because I never reach out, people ignored me.
I was just afraid to talk about it.
People teased me and discriminated against me.
It seemed like no one was there for me.
I was trying to get away from our problem.
Every day was a challenge.
But I realized I didn't have to do it alone.
My friends and family were there to support me.
Mental illness is extremely common. 1 in 5 American youth live with a diagnosable mental health challenge. Support from friends and loved ones is the best way to overcome stigma and discrimination. If you are struggling with mental health challenge, do not be afraid to talk about it. Come join the conversation and get support at www.reachouthere.com.
You know, I have a lot of sports analogies. Sorry, ladies. I was watching the draft last night, and the NFL draft, and there was the first 3 or 4 guys who were drafted. They would often say, you know, I'm really thankful for the support network that got me here. You know, and I know that you guys are, any of you guys who have experienced success, you can look back and say that there were people, there were parents, there were teachers that helped me get there, that supported me along the way. And when it comes to mental illness and to folks who are, those of us who are struggling with it at different times, having someone walk alongside us, being that voice, being that friend, is one of the most important things that we could possibly have, and one of the most important things that you could do for one of your friends. If you feel like any of these symptoms that you are experiencing, any of those symptoms, what do you do with it? Talk to a trusted adult. And when I speak to groups like this, I say this with all sincerity. If you tell one adult and they don't listen, go find another one. And if they don't listen, go find another one. And if they don't listen, go find another one. You will find someone who will listen to you. Okay? This is serious enough that you can't just say, let the first person who writes you off get into your head and push it out. And so if you need to if you can't find someone to talk to, keep looking. There is someone out there who will listen. And you just met 2 counselors, and you've got 2 up front who work at the local mental health center. There are plenty of people out here in your town who want to help you. The other thing you can do is talk to a friend. If you don't feel like talking, write a note, send a text, send a Snapchat, send a tweet, whatever it is. Use whatever you have to just let somebody know. It can be hard to stand up and to say to someone, I'm feeling depressed. It can be really difficult to say, when I walk into a room, my anxiety overwhelms me so much that I can feel my insides just tightening up and I want to just leave, right? It can take a lot to say those things. It can take even more to say, I think I'm hearing voices. I think I see things that I don't think are there. Do you see what I'm seeing? It can take a lot to say that to somebody. You know, so can you be strong enough to do that for yourself? And on the other side of it, can you be strong enough to hear that from a friend? And what would you do about it? If you are seeing those warning signs in yourself or seeing them in someone else, we want you to take action. Of course, I don't want to say it this way, but I am going to say it this way. The only mental illness that is uncurable, untreatable, I should say, is a death by suicide. And so this is one I do want to take a moment and try not to let it come out as lightly as the rest of the talk. Suicide is one of those things where we often don't talk about it, and we have these fears, right? If you are someone that you know is thinking about suicide or has been talking about suicide, the first thing, and if you have that even the slightest inkling in the back of your head, you know, that spidey sense that says, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. The first thing and the most important thing that you can do is to just look them in the eye and say, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your own life? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Do you think about suicide? Is killing yourself something that you've got on your mind? It sounds like a really hard thing to do and to say, but I can stand up here and say it to you. You can say it to someone that you love. But what's the fear of saying that to somebody? What are we afraid of if we look at someone and say, are you thinking about taking your own life? What's the fear? They'll say yes? Okay? All right. If they say yes, then what happens? We'll talk about what they say yes in a minute. What's another fear that we might have? That they'll shut you out. And that's really the biggest one, isn't it? We're afraid of what they'll think of us. All right? But I say this, I would rather not be friends with a live person because I asked them about whether or not they were going to kill themselves than to have my friend either attempt or succeed in attempting to take their life. It's that simple. So what is suicide? What are the warning signs of suicide? What are some things to look for? Someone who's talking about or writing about death. Someone who's thinking about, or says things like, I have no reason to live, or I'm just a burden to people, or I don't really have a tomorrow to look forward to. They're looking for ways to attempt suicide. For me, when I went through a really difficult period in my life where I knew that I was going to be losing friends and changing careers and kind of just, my whole life just felt like it was upside down, I had to stop and go seek help because, I was driving down the road and I could see myself just driving off the road. And just thinking, if I just took care of this, then I won't have to worry about selling the house and buying a new house and finding another job and, making new friends and everything else that was coming along with that, right? So when that happened, I said, you know what? I need to go seek help. Other warning signs of suicide. Looking for ways to attempt it. Feeling hopeless, desperate, or trapped. Giving away possessions or behaving recklessly. What do you do about it? You ask them. You ask someone straight to their face and just ask the question. Don't leave them alone. If they do say yes, don't leave them alone. Find a trusted adult. Get on that phone. I gave you cards there that have numbers that you can call. There's a suicide hotline that you can talk to. There's going to be someone on the other side of that you can talk with, that you'll be able to help you walk through that. There is plenty of help out there for you to find. If you have to, go to the emergency room or call 911. They have help there as well. But don't keep it a secret.
This was the first day we met. I knew right away that you were going to be a big part of my life. We had so many good times. But this was the day you started acting different. You isolated yourself. You were sad all the time. I thought you were ignoring me, but when I saw your wrists, I knew it was much more than that. I knew I had to talk to an adult, so you could get the help that you needed. And today is the day we appreciate the life that could have been lost.
Not every friendship has a tomorrow. If someone you know is showing signs of suicide, talk to an adult or call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, because suicide can be prevented.
And some of you may experience losing someone in your life. And it may have been someone that you talked to. It may have been someone that you felt close to. I want you to know a couple of things about that. Number one, the warning signs of suicide are often very subtle, even silent, very hard to see, right? And because of that, number two, it's not your fault. You can't know what somebody else is thinking. You can ask questions all you want, But if they're not going to tell you the truth, then you're not going to know the answer about what's going on. Okay? So know that if that ever happens to you, and let that burden go, because that's not your fault. Just like having a mental illness isn't your fault or their fault, that someone taking their life is not going to be your fault. We get to make our own decisions. So what can make mental illness better? Believe it or not, there are treatments out there that, I think back in the day, when I was growing up, we had very few options. Now there are different medicines and different therapies that you can find that we had no idea even existed and were possible. And so, you might have to find, kind of the right mix for what your treatment might be, but they're out there. There are things like group therapies and, just talking with someone, art therapies, pet therapies, non-traditional therapies, whether it's taking, herbs or, and then of course there's medication. The medicine today is pretty miraculous. They figured out lots of things that we didn't know even 5 or 10 years ago. Why does that say the earlier the better? Why would that be important? Why would it be important to seek treatment earlier? Be easier to treat when it's early? It might be too late. I had prizes for participation and I totally forgot. It might be too late. Yeah. If we don't get treatment at the beginning, then it could get bigger and bigger and bigger and snowball and be harder and harder to treat the further along. So earlier, the better. Things that can make the symptoms better, much like physical health, getting good sleep, eating right, getting exercise, talking with someone, writing it out in a journal, being active, being a part of a group. And people can't succeed. These are some famous folks. They all have one issue or another. And if we have time at the end, we'll come back and I can get my list out and tell you who they are. But there's ADHD up there. Demi Lovato has OCD. JFK had ADHD. And so there are lots of famous folks, people that we look at as successful, who have and are working and who are living their lives with a mental illness. Things that you can do if your friend is, if you have a friend who you feel like is experiencing mental illness, you can encourage them. You can watch for those warning signs, of course. You've got some resources there. We've got some we're going to hand out here in a few minutes. Help them stay positive. One of the most important things is just include them in your plans. Just if you know somebody who is struggling with a mental illness and you've both got the courage to share it with one another, then you can just be that support and encourage them and include them in your plans. Check in with them. Ask them how they're doing with their treatment. Hey, how's that group therapy going? Probably doesn't really roll off the tongue so easily. But, you can ask them questions about how they're doing or figure out a code word or what have you. Did you take your vitamins today? That's the one we use around my house often when we're talking about medicines and that kind of thing. So, there are things that you can do to help your friends that don't seem so in your face.
You are my friend. You are not a mental illness, because you cannot be defined by that, just as I cannot be defined by my race, gender, or sexuality. You can be defined by your strength, both literally and figuratively, and by your amazing sense of humor. You always know how to put a smile on my face. You can also be defined by your passion for music. There are endless definitions to who you are. Unfortunately, there are some people who would rather define us by what makes us different from them. However, you are more similar to me than many of those people are. I stand up for you because you deserve a lot better than you often endure. You are not your mental illness because that could happen to anyone. You are uniquely you because of your character.
So what can you do to help reduce the stigma? What can you do to help others feel more comfortable just being themselves? being able to be themselves. All right? Number one is just talk about it. Talk about your own mental health. Or just talk about the subject in general with your friends and family. You can share links on, like we talked about sharing stuff on Twitter and Facebook. Don't bully, stereotype, or label others. I think this is one of those ones that is probably one of the easiest ones for all of us to do. I know, growing up, we used to use the word retarded all the time, and then we kind of started to learn that it had more to do with an actual medical diagnosis, and then it was the derogatory term used towards people who had a mental illness. So we stopped using it. But I catch myself these days using the word crazy. Oh, he's crazy, or oh, she's crazy, or But stereotyping somebody like that and using that word as a label to bully somebody, that's what causes it to be difficult for people to seek treatment when it comes to mental illness. That's what stops somebody. That's what stops that 1 in 5 or the half of the 1 in 5 who don't go and get help. And so it's one of those things that we can do very easily. You see the guy who's walking down the hall and he's keeping to himself, and you can stop and say, we might say, oh, he's crazy. You can stop and say, wait a minute. First of all, I'm going to stop doing that. But second of all, I'm going to recognize that he's a person, and then maybe third, I'll give him a hello. I'm an introvert. I don't want everybody just walking up to me and talking to me when I want to be myself. So, I sympathize with the people who kind of would want to be like that. But I'll take a hello any day. So there are things that we can do to reduce the stigma of mental illness. There's a website that you can post on. You can wear one of these ribbons if I ever remember to throw them instead of just holding them in my hand. So easily to do. What are some of the things that you think you could do here? I guess you guys all come from different schools, but in your own school, what do you think are some things that you could do to help reduce the stigma of mental illness?
Carry a petition. Petition.
Yeah? Okay, so that's a great answer. Take someone fishing, but if what you do to relax is go fishing, invite somebody else along with that. When you feel like the world's getting to be too much, going fishing is something that makes a lot of sense. Going and grabbing a bite to eat. Finding somebody that you can have a bite to eat with. All right? Making groups within your school. What kind of groups might you? Okay. Support groups. Yeah. Yep. All right. Lefty. All right. So there are lots of things that you can do to help reduce the stigma of mental illness in your school. Some things to remember. Mental illnesses are just like medical illnesses. There are treatments out there available to them. We don't need to be afraid of them, and we don't need to keep them secret. There are warning signs that you can see within yourself and in others, and you can act on those warning signs. You have a sprained ankle. You can know that you're going through a season of depression. There are warning signs that you can follow, that you can see. You're not alone. There are people that are famous. There are people that are right next to you that are living with and being successful with a mental illness. And you have the power to end the silence.
Studies show that 1 in 5 teens are living with a mental health challenge.
However, mental health symptoms are treatable.
Don't be afraid to take a stand against the stigma.
Speak up or show support.
If we all speak loud enough, we can end this silence for good. Join the conversation and find support at www.reachouthere.com.
So now I want to take up a few minutes and let you guys hear from my friend Sarah. Sarah is an incredibly brave person. She's going to come up here and share her story with you. And you're going to learn a lot about her that I think you're going to be impressed with. So if you guys could shake off how boring I was and put your eyes up here and let's bring up Sarah.
So just to let y'all all know, my name is Sarah. This is my first public speaking, so I'm super nervous about it. Just to give y'all an idea of who I am. I'm 30 years old, which is ancient to a lot of y'all, I'm sure, at this point. I won't read completely from this. I'll probably just go back and forth to it. I'm a full-time mom. I have a 9-year-old that is going on 16, and I also have a paying job, which pays the bills. That's full-time as well. So how many of y'all like the beginning of the school year and the teachers like introduce yourself? Like who actually likes doing that? Anybody? Yeah. So like they all look at you and the teachers look at you, your classmates are looking at you and you're like, oh my gosh, I live such a boring life. What do I tell them right now? Because I mean skiing in the middle of July in South Carolina is not possible. So they all know you're lying to them. So high school, first of all, was one of the toughest times in my life. I'm not sure how many of y'all feel that way, but it was a huge challenge for me. I had pressure for myself, I had pressure from my friends, my family, and one of the biggest pressures was learning how to get to class on time. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I hated learning new locker combinations. Bottom locker, take me 5 minutes to even get into my locker, you know, try to get the right books, make it to class on time in 5 minutes. Body jams, y'all know what I'm talking about? That's a nightmare. So, I also wasn't popular. I dealt with a lot of low self-esteem. I was overweight, my feet were too big, I was shy, people would cheat off of me, I wouldn't tell them no. And also, another thing is my extracurricular activities that I participated in definitely did not boost that up. So, I was also dealing with a lot of personal demons. I'm sure some of y'all can relate to me. Some of them there were days that I could not get out of the bed, and there'd be no reason at all. I would cry myself to sleep at night. I mean, some days I just didn't have the will to live. Thoughts of self-harm to myself was something that I strongly dealt with. I didn't tell anybody. My parents didn't think too much of it at the time because in the 7th grade we moved from Greenville to Aiken County. I lost a lot of my friends. So mine really started in the 7th grade. I'd cry all day long, cry at night, and they were just like, whatever. So in the 9th grade one year, I was going to Carline, I was just standing at a tree, whatever, and I started getting sweaty, my heart was racing real bad, I couldn't breathe, I was freaking out, really thought I was having a heart attack. 14 years old, who has a heart attack? Never had any heart conditions in my life. So my parents took me immediately to the emergency room. I was actually put on a heart monitor for 24 hours to make sure that it was not a heart attack. And the ER had suggested that I go to my primary care physician the day after to have it checked. And so my doctor starts asking me these questions. And I'm like, okay, I'm not talking to you. I've only known you for about a year and a half because we just moved. And my mom starts answering for me. And I'm looking at her like she's lost her mind. I'm like, how do you know all this stuff? I don't tell you about any of it. And long story short, he explained to me that I was suffering from panic disorder. So I finally found out what a panic attack had felt like. There's still days that I get them, and some days I still feel like I'm dying. And believe it or not, the brown paper bag really does work. I have stress beads that my friend is right now holding because they are literally in a knot because I was so stressed this morning about doing this. So again, I was very disinterested in life. Like I had no will to get out of the bed still, even after all of this, even knowing what was going on. So he suggested counseling. And I was like, I am 14 years old. I am not going to speak to a counselor. Trying how to put this. slightly. My parents, I grew up in a very spiritual home. So my parents wanted me to go to a spiritual counselor because they didn't want secular views put in my head at 14 years old. Did not trust my counselor, did not like her, did not want to talk to her because I was terrified she was going to tell my parents. I mean, I had no one I could go to. Well, I was like, well, I have some friends that I trust, maybe I should talk to them about it. That was the worst idea possible at that time because stigma was so big back then. They were like, why aren't you in the hospital? Why are you still coming to school? We don't want to talk to you because this is something that we're going to catch. And it's not something you can catch. It just is what it is. And as Lee was talking about, people accept physical illness much more better than they do mental illness because with physical, they can see it. There's a reason it's there. They don't understand what it's like. You know, but it doesn't discriminate. Mental health doesn't. Like you said, 1 in 5 people suffer from it. You may live with rich parents. You may be in poverty. It does not matter who you are. It can affect anybody. I grew up in a loving household. I was never a subject to abuse growing up, but it still affected me. So also I started taking medication at 14. Who wants to take medication at 14 years old? I mean, hello, it's like your life is over. So one of the medications that was prescribed, it was new at the time on the market. They didn't know much about it. Later found out it was not prescribed for children or for adults under the age of 18. I'm 14 years old when they give me this medication. Not only did the thoughts of self-harm increase, I also had thoughts of harming others, which that terrified me because the idea of it actually gave me enjoyment. And then that's when they were like, you need to go out to someone stronger than the counselor, which is when they sent me to an actual psychiatrist, and a pediatric psychiatrist. With him, I felt more comfortable, and even though I was still young, they had like the coloring stuff in there. So I was like, okay, he deals with children. I can do this. So, at least I'm trying not to read this like word for word. I lost a lot of friends, as I said. Some of them would look at me and they just didn't see me anymore. Back then, guidance counselors weren't somebody we talked to. They are now. And I know that there have been things that happen, so if y'all need to leave at this point and go talk to Ms. Crow, totally understand. But at that point in my high school years, they were there to help you get on the right track for education. You just didn't go, because if you went, people knew, and they would talk about you behind your back. Also didn't trust them either. So I would like to say that accepting my mental illness was very quick. I didn't accept it until I was in my mid-20s. At 18 years old, I was actually correctly diagnosed with bipolar 1. I don't know if anyone knows what that is or not. Does anyone know what bipolar 1 is? Okay. So pretty much with that is extreme mania, which days I would reckless driving, and it wasn't even because I wanted to harm myself. It was just, it gave me a thrill. There'd be weeks with just couldn't get out of bed, self-harm, stuff like that. Well, they finally medicated me correctly. And one of the things that I've had to distinguish between the diagnosis is I also have feelings. There are still days I'm going to be sad. There are still days I'm going to be happy. It doesn't have to be my diagnosis. And another thing is I am not bipolar. I am a person living with that. It should not define who you are. And that's one of the most important things. Also, there are positive parts about it. One of my mentors is here right now. She was the one that explained to me that I wasn't my diagnosis. She's taught me a lot along the way. I worked with clients with mental health for years. That was very enlightening, made me actually realize that I wasn't so bad off. But the most important thing was learning that there were others. It didn't happen overnight, trust me. I was uneducated as well. It wasn't until my 20s that I finally started getting educated on why I was being affected the way I was. And education is the most important part when finding out what you have. Don't look at it as just, this is what I've been diagnosed with. Do research, find out what it is. In my opinion, there's three main things to recovery: medications, going to the doctor, and doing what I enjoy. I'm 30, been in mental health since I was 14 years old. I still go to a psychiatrist. I still take medications. Is it something I'm gonna be on the rest of my life? Absolutely. But I've come to accept that. The main thing is ending the silence. And one of those things is finding trusted people that you can talk to. You know, a lot of times we're very quiet about it because there's so much stigma and because we're scared we're gonna lose our friends. Don't let that scare you. I looked at it as they were really my friends, then they would have stuck by me through it all. But during my acceptance, I reached out to other friends. My best friend I was 6 when I met her, and she was 4. I'm now 30 and she's 28. She has been with me through it all. And she has never once left my side. Part of what I enjoy doing, I do positive activities. I spend time with my daughter. My parents actually have a better grasp of what my diagnosis is. They try to learn more about it. They're no longer ashamed that I'm on medication, because they got to where they didn't talk to people about it because of the stigma they would get. 2 of my favorite activities, let's just say 3. Newfound activity is hunting. Love your hunting, y'all. But 2 other things are hiking, kayaking. Both of those, I'm out in nature and I'm able to just relax and be myself. You know, one of my best friends and I do it together, and we're constantly laughing unless we're going up a hill, huffing and puffing, and we just can't get a breath out of us. I still read a lot, and yes, I still use it to escape, but I don't use it as an escape to what I once did. And so my main thing is, and ending the silence is very important. If you don't talk to somebody, then they're not going to know what you're going through. Because a lot of people don't even pay attention because we're so self-involved in ourselves, especially in high school. We all have our own problems that we're dealing with. We don't want to deal with other people. You know, find that trusted friend, because it's better to talk and be honest with somebody than doing something permanent that you won't come back from. As Lee mentioned, self-harm comes to a lot of minds. I know of someone who decided to go through with self-harm, and it was not successful. And from then on, she was in a vegetative state. I have a friend that unintentionally did self-harm and ended up dying from a heart attack due to other factors. And just remember, self-harm doesn't have to be even just cutting or taking pills just to make yourself better. It can be drugs too. You'll have to remember that. I mean, there's all sorts of ways of self-harm. But if you feel any type of way about that, you need to talk to somebody. You know, because if I had gone through with what I had planned on when I was younger, then I would not be standing here today to tell my story. And I was very nervous about getting up here and telling everybody this, but I think it's really important because you need to talk to someone. I cannot reiterate that enough of how important it is to talk to somebody. There's so many people available. Miss Crow is here. She's a counselor here. I'm sure you have people in your school that you can speak to. We have the Department of Mental Health, and they have a wonderful PATH program, which is children, adolescents, and families. In fact, the director for it is sitting right here. I mean, there's so many people you can reach out to. You know, write a letter to someone and give it to someone in private. Pull a teacher aside. They're there to listen to you. I know stigma is bad, and it's always going to be bad. People still to this day, if I have a bad day, they're like, oh, she's not on her medications. No, I still have feelings. I still have bad days. It happens to all of us. But Lee hit a lot of important points there and different things. And like when he pulled y'all up for the birthdays, look around you. Look how many students are in here. I know one, can I use you as an example? Well, I'm asking.
Sure, I don't know what you're going to say, but you're the rest of the
Okay. Like you said, 1 out of 5 is suffering a mental illness or a mental health condition. Look around you. Look how many students are in here. Think about how many students are in here that are suffering silently right now. And if they come to you, they are using you because they trust you. Listen to them. It is very important because you could end up saving a life. And there are going to be some people that tell you not to tell a parent or a teacher. If you don't tell a friend or teacher, what kind of friend are you? And that's my thing. I wish I had had the help. I wish I had had the support. I wish I had been educated about what I was dealing with. And, you know,
Yes.
First of all, my necklace, your story isn't over yet. Your story is never over, no matter what it is you're going through. My second one, come here. Okay, throw up your arm. You see hers? She's got hope and a semicolon. Mine says fight and a semicolon. We have green ribbons because it is for mental health. Her two daughters, the four of us went and got these. One got a semicolon that was rather large, and
They both got semicolons.
but well, yeah, different size semicolons. Semicolon is pause. That means pause. Think about the action you're about to take. Think about what it's going to do and to other people around you. Because what you decide to do is going to affect so many people around you. It's not just yourself. So I just wanted to share the tattoo with you and the necklace with you.
Hey, we're going to hang out here for a little bit if you had questions. So we also have a quick survey we need you to fill out. So don't have done this yet, but what kind of questions do you have? I got prizes for questions. Okay, thank you. Don't go anywhere yet. We need you to fill out these evaluations before you leave. So, all right, we got some questions. So, can we bring it back together? Excellent. Yeah. Yes, you can have a bracelet. That's a great question. All right. So, all right. So up on the board.
Guys, listen up.
So up on the board, you saw Demi Lovato. If you want to, you can kind of scroll back to. Keep hitting the left side of the screen. All right, up on the screen, the famous people. Demi Lovato suffers from bipolar disorder. There we go. Brandon Marshall, borderline personality disorder. Adele, general anxiety disorder. Ruby Rose, depression, JFK anxiety. Channing Tatum, ADHD. Margaret Chow, depression. Do we even know she is? Does anybody know Margaret Chow is? Serena Williams, depression. What? Yes. Adam Levine, ADHD. Halle Berry, depression. Royce White, anxiety. Lady Gaga, depression. Ron Artest, also known as Meta World Peace, depression. Will Smith, ADHD. Alicia Keys, depression. Leonardo DiCaprio, OCD. Kerry Washington, eating disorder. Go on. So, can you guys? Does everybody have a survey to fill out? Everybody have a
survey? Raise your hand. My students will take it out.
All right, let's have some questions. You had to hear some things you had questions about. So, one of the questions that we often get is a mental illness something that you're born with? Is it in your body chemistry, or is it something that your environment causes? Have you guys had that question before? Have you thought that question? What do you think the answer is? DNA, environment. See, we have both answers, right? And that's actually the answer, is that it's both. And so some mental illnesses can be caused by environmental factors. PTSD, for example. Others are biological. You know, ADHD is one. But even the extremity and the level of PTSD can be connected to your biology. There have been studies out recently about psychopaths. Does anybody know what a psychopath is? So this is the kind of person who would harm somebody and never feel any emotion about it. There have been studies recently that show that that's something that they're born with, but they can, a person who has that brain disorder can be raised and nurtured and loved and will never act out on it. In fact, can be pretty famous and pretty successful. So it's both our environment and our biology that can affect our mental well-being. What other questions? What are some of the things that you do to maintain good mental health? I got 3 more bracelets. What are some things that you do to maintain good mental health? Yeah, good, because I didn't want to give one to a Clemson fan. What do you do? Talk to friends. All right? Exercise. That's exercise.
The one in the blue jacket.
Do things that you like to do, like what? Hiking. All right. What was yours? Powerlifting. What else? Have you seen the powerlifting video where the guy starts bleeding? What else do you do? Pencils? What? Running. Yes. Here are pencils. Music? Music. Yes. Here's another pencil.
Writing or journalism?
What?
Writing or journalism?
Writing, yes. Oh, nailed it. All right. Play video games. Yes, play video games can be relaxing. It can help you connect with others. What you got? Eating. I love to eat. Can you tell? What? No, you do not have to put your name on them. Any other questions? Wait. Drawing. Awesome.
Does anybody have any questions for us from what any of y'all have heard from me with the young adult story or from Lee in the presentation?
Another card? Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you didn't get a card, I'll be at the door to hand some of those out. So, quick question. You guys all come from different schools, right? Is that right? Yeah? Okay. So, what schools are represented? Okay. Those 7? All right. North Augusta, are you guys here? Okay. Who, if you or someone you know needs to talk to someone at a mental health issue at your school, who do you go and see in North Augusta? Do you have a name? Bowman? Is that right? Roland. South Aiken, where do you go? South Aiken here? Yeah. Who do you see? Who do you talk to? A counselor? Do you know where the counselors are at your school? Yes? All right. 2. Settle down. Midland Valley. Miss Mo? Nice job, Midland Valley. You guys are winning. Midland Valley, you're up there twice. Rich Spring. Aiken. Who do you talk to? Miss Geis? Tice. I'm deaf in both names. I don't know. Silver Bluff. Who do you see? Who's there? 3 different counselors? Okay. There is someone out there who will talk to you. There's someone out there you can take your friends with. I think we're up. We're up? All right. Listen, thank you guys so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I know it can be difficult. So And it is a difficult subject, and letting some steam out right now is totally appropriate. So I appreciate your time. Definitely look out for each other, and make sure you know who it is that you can talk to if you ever need to. Okay?
Okay, guys, look up here for just a minute. A couple instructions. First off, what do we say to our team today? Second, on your way out, my students will be out there to get the collect the pencils and the surveys from you. And your teachers will have some other information, they have some resources and information that we're going to be getting to you and saying how it might not be today, to be honest, it might be on Monday. We're going to try to get it out to you today. Thomas and Christine have that. So teachers, if you will see them to make sure that you get your paperwork. But I want to, guys, listen up for a minute. I want to end it just by saying thank you. You were incredibly attentive in a very warm room. You were very attentive. But I want to stress what they've said today. Both Lee and Sarah stressed. Talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. You know at this Career Center, I know you all have great relationships with your instructors. Talk to us. We have resources available. Ms. Crow is up there. She's always up there and willing to talk with you. So please, if you have a good friend, I'm going to reiterate something I heard you say today. And Sarah too. I would rather lose a friend because I told somebody than lose that friend for good. So if you know someone that you feel like is really struggling with a mental health issue or possibly self-harm, suicide, tell somebody. Tell an adult. And if you don't get that first one, go to that second one and keep going until they lose.